Today, let's talk about what to do in the week leading up to your official GMAT exam. It's that time of the year where a lot of you are heading into your final week before taking the exam, and there are generally a lot of feelings that come with this. It can be hard to know how to manage your time and energy, so let's make that easier for you. There are 5 keys to a great final week of GMAT prep. The first is to keep studying. The second is to take practice exams according to your skill growth. The third is to handle basic logistics in advance. The fourth is to control the variables outside the test. And the fifth is on test day, focus on great inputs, not outputs. Let's break each one of those down. Number one, you want to keep studying. I don't know why so many people online seem to recommend not studying or taking excessive breaks or focusing only on material that you've already seen in the final week before the exam. But suffice to say that I have not seen any of that work. So let's try to correct some of that incorrect information. Not studying is exactly the opposite of what you want to do if you're looking to improve your score. And because a higher score is always better than a lower score, that means you should be studying in the final week leading up to your exam. Even a little study is better than no study. So let's just dispel the whole don't study thing right there. I think the next natural question, though, is if you're going to study, how should you do that well? The most common wrong thing that I hear is to stop trying to raise your ceiling and instead focus on your error log and only solving questions that you've already seen. This is actually wrong for a few reasons, but probably the most important one is that you're going to see unfamiliar questions on test day. In fact, you're going to see only questions that you haven't seen before on test day. Now, to be clear, the questions that you're going to see may be familiar in terms of concepts or patterns. And if they weren't, there would be no point in studying. But there's no way that you're going to see the exact questions that you've seen in practice on test day. And GMAC, the people who write the GMAT, they spend a ton of money making sure that's the case. In fact, that's why there's a 16-day waiting period between exams. It's so that they can refresh the question pool and you're not seeing a bunch of questions you've already seen when you took the test previously. So while it may make logical sense to quote unquote like get solid on the patterns you've already seen in the final week, if that's the only thing that you're doing, it usually creates a major roadblock, which is that question number one of the official exam is the first time that you've seen a new question under time pressure in 7 days. And if you're not seeing new questions in your final week of prep, how do you think that first question on test day is going to feel? It's usually pretty scary, throws a lot of people off. So what you want to do instead is you want to invest 20% of your study time working on material you've seen previously. That could be flashcards, it can be study sheets, it can be testing yourself on key concepts, and it can be solving problems that you've seen before. That's a good idea because you don't want to go backwards in the final week of prep by focusing only on new material, but you don't want to focus only on old material either. There's lots of reasons for that. We're going to talk about 2 today. One I just mentioned, which is you're going to see unfamiliar and new material on test day, and you want to be familiar with that feeling going into test day. 20% focused on previous material is the right balance for most people. The other 80% of your study time can be focused on new problems, new concepts, and just general improvement and growth and raising your ceiling. I've given a tremendous amount of advice over the years and specifically in the past couple episodes about how to improve your skills using that 80% time. But let me just make it as simple as possible for you if you're referencing this in the future and it's a little bit hard to find any of the previous episodes. Just look at your most recent practice exam data and ask yourself what one thing, if I improved it, would turn the most wrong answers into right answers. Just one thing. What one thing could I do to turn the most wrong answers into right answers and invest all the 80% time working on that one thing? You might not be able to improve everything in 7 days, but you can for sure improve one thing. So do that. I recommend focusing on only one, but if it's really easy for you to identify 2 or 3 things, feel free to work on all 3. But just know that beyond three focus areas, you're usually diluting your energy, and it's unlikely that any of them are going to improve. So if you have four focus areas, that's the same as having zero focus areas in my experience. And it's really, really easy to waste a lot of time working on four things, but improving none of them. I've discussed extensively how to improve your timing, how to stop missing questions you know how to do, and how to learn content quickly in our episode on how to cram for the GMAT, which we'll link in the description for you below. So if you want more advice on how to move the needle on new material in the final 7 days before test day, that's all there for you. And we've got that episode linked in the description. But the simplest way to improve one content area in your final 7 days of prep is to do a lot of questions on that topic and review after each individual question. Don't do sets of one topic because that's unrealistic. You're never going to see 20 data sufficiency questions in a row. Don't do that to yourself. It's going to hurt your time management. And if there's something you're doing wrong on that first data sufficiency question, you don't want that to compound 19 times before you fix it. Review after every question if it's like a topic improvement that you're going for. If you need to work on your section pacing more than you need to work on any individual topic, do sets that are the same length as the real exam and mix the content areas. Like I said, don't be trying to combine your timing work and improving your data sufficiency at the same time. That's going to backfire in multiple major ways. Just pick one area. If you need to work on data sufficiency, do one at a time. If you need to work on timing, if that's the bigger priority, then do sets that mix all the topics you're going to see in the section and do them the same length as the real exam. Another really wrong piece of advice that I hear a lot of people say about the last week before the exam is to do shorter sets to avoid burning yourself out. And what happens if you do shorter sets before a real exam is you get used to shorter sets. Again, that's the opposite of what you want. You want to be used to sets that are exactly the same length as the real test. So do that with mixed topics. There are plenty of tools to do this online, so try a web search and just reach out to us if you can't find a good resource to fit your situation for doing mixed topic practice. We're at the GMAT strategy on current social channels if you want to DM, or contact at thegmatstrategy.com if you prefer to email. CONTACT, contact at thegmatstrategy.com. Essentially, you want to do quant sets that are 21 questions, verbal sets that are 23 questions, DI sets that are 20 questions. And you want to mix a roughly similar difficulty and mix of question types as the real exam. Again, a web search can get you almost everything you need here, but feel free to reach out if you get stuck. If you're really, really unsure and you're on a tight timeline, like you're taking the exam in 2 days and you can't get to us, you can go 1/3 easy, 1/3 medium, 1/3 hard. Or if you want to challenge yourself and push yourself, you can do half medium, half hard. And in quant, you're going to see mostly word problems with some algebra problems, some exponents, some, maybe one or two probability, one or two counting questions mixed in there. And then in verbal, you're going to see about half reading comp, half critical reasoning. And in DI, you're going to see one or maybe two MSR, usually like 3-4 graphs, 3-4 tables, 3-4 two-part analysis, and 5 to 8 data sufficiency. That's the rough mix if you need a quick start guide there. So that's the first key to success in your final week. I know it sounds a little crazy, but like a lot of people out there tell you not to study in that final week. And I think I just have no idea how they've arrived at that conclusion. So just if you are going to study and you want to study well, don't just study things you've already seen. Again, that's another giant piece of advice that I get. I just see it repeated so much. And again, I don't think that's a good idea at all on multiple levels. Believe me, I'm like holding back in how heavy-handed I'm giving this advice right now, everybody. So instead, use 20% of your time to focus on questions you've seen. There is value in that, and review material, and then use the other 80% to grow one main area that will improve your results the most. That's what I recommend in terms of study time in your final days before the test. That's usually the thing that moves the score the most positively. The second key is to take practice tests according to skill growth. That might mean you're taking a lot of practice exams in your final week, or it might mean you're taking 0 practice exams. There's no right or wrong number of practice exams to take in the final week. So please avoid the take a practice exam at least 7 days from the exam advice, or avoid the never take a practice exam the day before your exam advice. It's way too general. Yes, even if that advice might apply in a wide variety of situations, it's not universally true. So you can't bank on it. You want to take practice exams according to where you are in your skill growth cycle. Again, I've talked about this a ton over the years and more specifically in the most recent two episodes. If you want a little bit more on that, just head back in the feed, one or two episodes. And just while we're on that topic, you should be extremely skeptical of any always or never advice when it comes to this test, because there's just a ton of individual variation in terms of skills, abilities, learning rates, time to study on a daily basis between people. So I recommend just ignoring all that and just focus on your skills. Your skills are the thing that drive your score, and your score is probably what you care about. That's why you're here right now. So, how do you know if your skills are good enough? I talked about this in last week's episode, like I said, but in general, if you can get 80% or better accuracy and 2 minutes and 15 seconds average time per question or faster in a given topic across the difficulty ranges that align with your target score, you should be ready to take a practice exam. And if you're not seeing those metrics in your practice sets, then you probably shouldn't take a practice exam. You should just grind on that focus area until you can get 80% or better accuracy and 2 minutes and 15 seconds average time per question in the difficulty range that aligns with your target score. Now, some platforms will give you actual difficulty ranges. So, like if your target score is a 645, then in the 605 to 655 range, for example, you want to be hitting 80% or better accuracy, 2 minutes and 15 seconds average time per question in your focus areas. If you're not hitting those, you should just do more practice problems in those focus areas rather than taking a full length exam. If you're hitting those numbers, then you might want to take a full length exam to practice your stamina, practice your timing, practice the end-to-end experience, and also get a feedback loop going of what the next focus area could be for you that you might be able to put a couple days into and maybe get a nice little lift. So a couple thoughts to keep in mind here on this advice. On MBA.com, 80% or better on easy questions is probably going to put you somewhere in the like low 500s, maybe like a 515, give or take. 80% or better at the medium level is going to put you in the high 500s, maybe around like a 585, give or take. And then 80% or better in the hards is going to put you in the low to mid 600s, let's say around like a 615, give or take, something like that. There's a lot of variance in these ranges because like day to day luck of the draw matters. Like you might see a lot of strength areas in your quant section on one day, you might see a lot of weakness areas in your quant section the other day. The types of problems, like the number of word problems, the number of probability problems, number of algebra problems, like I said, is somewhat consistent from test to test. But within word problems, there's a lot of different things that can come up, and some might play to your strengths, some might not. So that little bit of luck of the draw can play a role there. And then there is a 20-point margin of error in the scoring algorithm itself. So on the same day, a 615 could be a 635 with the exact same performance, or a 625 with the exact same performance. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there, and I'm trying to build that in so that you're not banking on this, but it's useful enough to make good estimates. If your goal score is higher, then those ranges we're talking about, you'll probably want some supplemental material. There isn't a ton of like crazy, crazy hard material on MBA.com. And your paid provider can help you with this if you have a paid provider, and a straightforward web search can also help you with some free material if you're in that situation. Again, none of these ranges are guarantees. Just want to be really clear about that. They're just likely ranges that you'd land in to help you plan whether you're ready to take another practice exam or not. On the subject of practice exams, I've said this a ton in the past. You definitely want to prioritize the exams from MBA.com. And you can take all of those 6 exams as of today twice each without seeing any repeat questions. Now, if you start taking them more than twice, you're probably going to see repeats. That's going to inflate your score. And again, quick web search on GMAT practice exams can help you find some alternatives, but the MBA.com ones, the official GMAT practice exams, are going to be the highest quality data that you can get. And it's not that you can't get high quality data from other sources. It's just those other sources aren't going to be using real GMAT questions, and they're not going to be using the real scoring algorithm, but the official practice exams do. Real GMAT questions, real scoring algorithm, you're not going to get better data than that. Again, just reiterating some of the important things here to keep you focused on the right stuff. Focus on timing first. If you need to improve your timing, check out our How to Get Fast episode, which is going to be linked below as well. Timing is the most important thing because it doesn't matter how good your knowledge is if you're running out of time on the section. There's a huge penalty for not finishing this section. So timing is the top priority if you're struggling with that. If you're good on your timing, the next highest priority is focusing on not missing questions you know how to do. Again, if you're missing questions you know how to do, knowing more content is not going to help your score. You're already not getting credit for the content you know. How does knowing more content help that? It doesn't. So it can be painful, it can be difficult. I don't want to make light of it. It's not a good situation to be in, but it's very fixable, and it's usually very fixable on a tight timeline. So that's good news in your final week. If you are missing questions you know how to do, check out our episode on how to score high consistently, which is also linked below. If you're having trouble deleting missing questions you know how to do, that's a full episode on how to get better at that. And then only when you've resolved your timing and new but missed problems do you want to focus on improving content knowledge. Because if your timing's good and you're not missing questions you know how to do, then knowing more stuff is going to help your score. So we got specific episodes on quant, verbal, and DI for you linked below as well. If your timing is solid and you're not missing more than one question you know how to do in each section, I would focus primarily on content study at that point. If you've improved your timing, improved at getting what you know right, and improved your content knowledge in your top one focus area to that 80% plus accuracy and 2 minutes and 15 seconds average time per question or faster in your target score range, then you can absolutely take another practice exam no matter how close you are to test day. Get that data. It'll probably help you improve your score. You'll probably learn from that last practice test. Now, of course, if you're burning yourself out and you're 3 sheets to the wind and you're exhausted, then taking a practice test is probably not a good idea. Resting is probably the better idea there. So use some common sense, deploy some common sense here. But if you're like, you know what, I've got the energy, I've got the time, let's get this data. Let's see if we can get another couple points out of this thing. Then I would recommend going for it. But again, focus it on those metrics. Don't be taking practice tests because you feel like taking a practice test. That's usually a terrible, terrible metric for people, and the score often goes down. Listen to last week's episode on what to do if your score goes down, if that does happen to you, but you should be preventing that at all costs by using metrics to gauge your skills. If you don't have the data to back up your skill growth, then taking another practice exam is probably going to be a huge waste of time and energy. Really, really important point there, okay? But there's no hard and fast rule around when or when not to take a practice exam, okay? It's all about your situation. And, if you need a 100-point gain in the last week, then not trying to raise your ceiling and focus only on what you've seen before is probably not going to get you there. So if you need the Hail Mary, there it is. Lastly, and most importantly, take practice exams in realistic conditions. A lot of this stuff should go without saying, but we all just get distracted, we get hyped up, we maybe read too many posts on social media or whatever, and or we're just in panic mode because we're like up against the deadline and there's a lot of stress. There's all kinds of things that can lead to us making irrational decisions, and you just want to kind of take a deep breath and just make sure that if you're going to take a practice exam, you take it in realistic conditions. Don't take it before work. Don't take it after work. And don't take it any way you wouldn't take the official GMAT. That's going to skew your data and it's going to make it virtually impossible to make good judgments based on the results. So if you're not treating your practice exams like a real GMAT, if you're not doing the same thing the night before, the same thing the morning of, it's a bad idea to take a practice exam. Don't do it because bad data is worse than no data. That's going to take you 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. We don't want that. So again, I hear a lot of folks talk about a magic number or timing of practice exams, like take a practice exam every week for the last 6 weeks leading into your official exam. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. They have no idea how much time you're studying between exams. They have no idea what your review process is between exams. It's just I'm not even going to pretend to put myself in the mindset where that recommendation would make sense. You want to take your practice test based on your current skill set, your growth rate, and how you're feeling. You want to use metrics, and then you don't want to exhaust yourself. That's it. That's all you need to think about. It's not rocket science here. Okay, now that you've got some good advice around studying in the last week and some good advice around the right number of practice exams and when to take them, let's talk about the third key, which is handling basic logistics in advance. Again, might seem overly obvious, but it's worth just reminding ourselves, even if you already know, that you want to handle all the physical details of test day ahead of time. Couple specifics. Have your 2 forms of ID that you need in your go bag, along with any snacks or other materials that you might need to bring to the test center, and have that ready at the latest the night before the test. Trying to organize all your stuff on the day of the exam, it's usually a losing battle and it often creates unnecessary stress. So don't do that to yourself. Set yourself up for success. If you're taking the exam online, there's some extra logistics there. Make sure you've read the room and desk requirements and that your space is set up at the latest the day before. All that information is available on MBA.com, so set aside at least 30 minutes to get that stuff organized. It can be a little bit more involved than you might expect, especially like external monitors and those kinds of policies. I'm not going to say those here because they change them sometimes, so I want you to have the most up-to-date information. It's a quick web search, and it's just worth being ahead of the game on that since, again, it's usually stressful to have to handle that on test day, and it rarely enhances your performance to have to deal with that kind of stuff when your exam should have already started, which is what's going to happen if it's not done properly in advance for the online exam. You're going to have to sit there with the proctor telling you where to move stuff, and it's just not an ideal situation to be in. Some other logistics to think about in advance. Figure out transportation, have a transportation plan. It's not always possible to travel the route that you're going to take on test day to the test center in advance, but try to get as close as possible if you can. Go all the way into the building if you can. Check in, go to the check-in room if possible. You're not going to be able to check in for the test if it's not your test day. But sometimes you can go all the way to like the waiting area and kind of just scope out, see what it looks like. You'll be happy you did it on test day, and I think you're going to feel a lot better as a result of doing so. Now, if you don't have time for that, obviously don't do it. But if you do have the time, that's a great thing to do in your final week before the exam is just scope out the route. Where are you going to park? Where are you going to get dropped off? What's the vibe like? What's the security protocol? Is the elevator funky? Do you have to go, you take the stairs? It's just good to know that stuff in advance. Another thing to consider, if you get there early on test day, what are you going to do with that time? Are you going to sit in your car and review material? Because you're not allowed to bring study materials into the test center. That's good to know in advance. Are you going to do some meditation? There's all kinds of stuff that can be helpful. My best advice is to practice a few different things before your practice exams. So ideally long before the final week, but if it is in the final week, implement this on any practice exams that you take and see what helps you the most. That way by test day, you've got a good idea what's going to work for you. Those are the big things. Figure out what snacks make you feel best during your break, know what order you're going to take the sections in, make sure you're familiar with the basic policies and the check-in process. All that stuff's available online. And we've even got an episode on the full test day experience with a lot more advice on that stuff and a complete walkthrough of like all the steps that you take on test day if you want to be ultra prepared. We'll link that below for you as well. It's for the in-person and the online exam in the same episode. I talk about some of the differences. A lot of people have found it helpful. There might be other logistics you need to personally coordinate, like communicating with important people or having certain food at home. Just make a list of additional things beyond the stuff I just mentioned that you feel are important and just get those handled before test day, not on test day. That's really going to help you out. Otherwise, there's no need to overcomplicate this part of the process. Just get it done in advance so you can focus on great execution. Fourth key. Fourth key to the final week before test day is controlling the variables outside the test itself. So the most basic and essential are sleep, diet, and exercise. There's so much that could be discussed here, but just to make it simple, just get adequate sleep, adequate nutrition, and adequate exercise. If you don't know what's right for you, get some professional help if you can. These are investments that last a lifetime. They make virtually everything else in your life better. So it's a very worthy thing to do. But if that's not in the budget, either time or money wise right now, some wearable technology can be great, like a smartwatch, smartphone app. There's a lot of great solutions out there. And if you don't like either of those first two options, just start with a web search based on your preferences and then keep a journal of how well you sleep, how well you eat, and how often you exercise. Just a physical, old school, low tech journal. And what I recommend is just assign yourself an energy score each day and then optimize that. Take some notes on it, like, okay, why was I a 6 today? What did I eat yesterday? What's my exercise routine like? What's my sleep routine like? Oh, I was an 8 today. Are there any determining factors, contributing factors that I can identify? You don't need to invest a lot of money or time in this, but a little bit of focus goes a long way because, again, just solid sleep, diet, and exercise generally helps our performance. Now, it's easy to become overly obsessive about these things, and that can be awesome in certain seasons of life, but not this season. Just for now, just make them good enough, and that's more than enough for a good test day. You don't want to be like doing some crazy sleep, protocols in the final week before your exam. Just make sure it's okay. The next variable to control is stress. We can't always control how much stress we're subjected to because work and personal life issues can be unpredictable, but you can improve how you respond to stress. So I recommend working on that a little bit. Set aside 2 to 5 minutes during each study session to just experiment with different stress management techniques and maybe do a little bit of research until you find one or a couple that work for you. Couple things to try out. Mindfulness meditation has a ton of research to support its effectiveness. There's actually research studies done on standardized tests, somewhat interesting. And there are tons of free meditations available on YouTube, so I'd recommend starting there. See how it lands for you. If it's a fit, great. If not, don't worry about it. A web search on different stress management techniques and books can also be really, really beneficial. I would just explore what seems relevant and valuable to you based on your interests and your beliefs and just experiment. If none of them work, at least you tried. If you get something that helps you 1 or 2%, I think it's more than worth it. It's just a couple minutes a day. Obviously, control the things you can control, like avoiding stressful people, avoiding stressful situations, and avoiding stressful problems that could be delayed or avoided. Like if it's unanticipatable or you can't control it, like I said, just focus on how you deal with it. A certain amount of stress is pretty much inevitable. But the controllable things, I just want to remind you, just like I would like to be reminded in these kind of situations, like, hey, do the basics well. Maybe the week before your GMAT might not be the best time to have that tough conversation with that important person. You know, maybe if it can be delayed, if it can wait till the next week, that might be better. If it has to be had now, obviously have it now, and then work on controlling how you respond to the stress. But just giving you a reminder, like scheduling things, think about the types of people, the types of commitment you have the week before your exam. A little bit of advanced planning can help out a lot. The last outside of the test variable to do your best to control is fatigue. Of course, some people are going to have more obligations than others. Some people are going to be better sleepers than others. Some people are going to be worse sleepers. The point is not to be well rested on some generalized scale. It's to be as well rested as you possibly can be given your other obligations. So figure out what works for you, execute to the best of your abilities. If there's some projects you can push back or delay or renegotiate, that's great. If not, you just work on the sleep, diet, and exercise pieces you can control. Focus on the controllables. Try out some stress management techniques. You don't need perfection. You just need to be the best level that you can be given the situation. And that'll lead to the best performance that you're possibly capable of on test day. Again, rarely do you need perfection to get a great score. You just need to avoid things that are super counterproductive. And it's just good to be reminded of that stuff in my experience. So that's that. Last piece of advice here. On test day, focus on great execution, not the result. This is at the top of the episode what I said as focus on inputs, not outputs. What I mean by that is focus on great execution in your process. Don't focus on the result of the test while you're taking the test. Focusing on your score or trying to assess your performance during the exam almost always hurts your performance. It's extremely unlikely that that's going to help you perform better. In fact, most of the time you perform worse because it usually harms your execution. You're taking your focus off of performing well, doing the processes that you know are going to get you good results, double checking things, writing things carefully, reading things carefully, a lot of basic stuff like that. There might be more. But it's very difficult to control our thoughts, maybe impossible. Conversation for another time. So if you find yourself thinking about the outcomes and you find yourself kind of your attention wandering or you're stressed out about it, just use that as a trigger to refocus on your inputs. Anytime you find yourself focusing on outcomes, refocus yourself on inputs. Proper inputs is what drive great outcomes. Focusing on great execution, great reading, great double checking, great scratch work, all of that for sure will improve your results. So focus on those things, and that should yield the best results possible. But again, it can be difficult. So it's not about staying focused. It's about refocusing if you find your focus wandering. If you find yourself thinking about the outcome, just say, let me refocus on the inputs. That's what's going to create the best outcome here. Those are the 5 keys to a great final week of GMAT prep. Again, if you're unsure how to execute on any of this, given your situation, we're here to help anytime. I gave you our contact info. We're at the GMAT strategy on current social channels if you want to DM us, or contact CONTACT at thegmatstrategy.com if you want to email us. As always, my greatest hope is that this material is going to make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the exam, just head to our website, thegmatstrategy.com, which is linked in the description of this content, and check out our free video on how you can reach your dream GMAT score in half the normal time. We specialize in speed, and we're trying to hook it up for free with that video. In the meantime, this is a regular show, so please subscribe and if you like it, and please stay positive and please stay consistent with your studies, everybody. You can do this. Talk soon.